Imagine just for a second that you are one of the most famous, instantly recognizable outlaws in all of human history.
Right.
I mean, you've inspired centuries of movies, books, legends. Your very name is basically synonymous with maritime rebellion.
It's huge legacy.
Exactly. Yet, your actual career in crime, the entire foundation for this towering immortal fame, it lasted exactly 61 days.
Which is just wild to think about. It challenges everything we assume about how legends are built, you know?
It really does.
Because we tend to think historical notoriety requires, like, a lifetime of achievement. Or at least, years of sustained terror.
Yeah, you picture Blackbeard terrorizing the seas for years.
Right. But history has a funny way of distorting time. Especially when you factor in the sheer shock value of someone who just breaks every single rule of their society all at once.
Well, welcome to our deep dive. Our mission today is to untangle the real-life historical narrative of Anne Bonny from the absolute mountain of myth that surrounds her.
And it is a mountain.
It really is. So we're looking at a fascinating stack of sources for you today, ranging from original 1720s trial transcripts to some wildly sensationalized 18th century pirate biographies.
Yeah, the contrast between those sources is pretty stark.
Totally. So we want to invite you to explore how a few chaotic weeks at sea turned an unknown woman into basically an open-source cultural icon.
Yeah, and to understand the pirate Anne Bonny, we actually have to start by looking at a completely different person.
Right.
We have to look at the author who essentially invented her backstory, because the Anne Bonny that most people think they know, that character was largely constructed after the real woman had already vanished from the historical record.
Right. And almost all the details people think they know about her early life, they come from this one wildly successful book published in 1724.
Yeah, exactly.
It was written by this guy, Captain Charles Johnson, and it was called A General History of the Pirates. And I read through the sections you highlighted, and let me tell you, whoever this Johnson guy was, he was basically operating like a modern reality TV producer.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he knew how to script a soap opera.
He did, because he was writing for an audience that was obsessed with, like, the macabre spectacle of public executions and highwaymen and all that.
They wanted the drama.
Exactly. So Johnson gave his readers exactly what they wanted. He gave them this scandalous, highly theatrical origin story.
Right.
According to his narrative, Anne was born in Ireland, and she was the illegitimate child of a wealthy attorney and his household servant, this woman named Mary.
And the way this affair is supposedly discovered by the attorney's wife in the book,
Yeah.
it's pure farce.
It reads like a play.
It really does. It involves stolen cutlery.
The silver spoons.
Yes, the spoons.
Yeah.
So according to Johnson, the servant Mary knew a local tanner who stole 3 silver spoons and hid them in Mary's bed.
Which is such a specific, weird detail.
Right. So Mary reports the tanner, but they can't find the spoons. Later, the wife comes home, the tanner confesses it was just a joke, and the wife goes to check Mary's bed.
And she finds the spoons.
She finds them. But the tanner claimed he hid them days ago. So the wife realizes, wait, if the spoons have been in Mary's bed for days, where has Mary been sleeping?
The deduction, obviously, being that Mary was sleeping in the master bedroom with the attorney.
Exactly.
So the wife supposedly sets a trap, leaves the spoons in Mary's bed again, and catches them in the act. The affair is totally exposed.
It's so cinematic.
Right. And then Mary goes to prison, gives birth to Anne behind bars, and the disgraced attorney eventually takes them across the Atlantic to the province of Carolina to basically start over.
And Johnson's story, it just keeps escalating from there.
Oh, it really does.
He claims the attorney raises Anne as a boy at first, hoping to make her like a law clerk. Then, in Carolina, the father somehow becomes this wildly successful merchant and buys a massive plantation.
Yeah, quite the career pivot.
Right. Meanwhile, Anne grows up with this famously violent temper. Johnson writes that she stabbed a maid to death with a knife.
Though he casually mentions there's no actual proof for that.
Yeah, it's a casual rumor of murder. And he says she severely beat up a young man who tried to assault her.
And then the climax of Johnson's whole origin myth revolves around her marriage.
Right, because the wealthy attorney expects his fiery daughter to marry into Carolina high society.
Exactly. But instead, she marries this penniless, unremarkable sailor named James Bonny. The father is outraged, totally disowns her, kicks her out, and the young couple is forced to flee to the notorious pirate haven of Nassau in the Bahamas.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Please do.
Because as a reader today, I mean, it's incredibly entertaining. But wait, if we have no actual records of her early life, How can historians be so overwhelmingly sure that Charles Johnson just made all of this up?
That's a good question.
Right. Couldn't the records of a disgraced attorney simply just be lost to time? I mean, absence of evidence isn't necessarily evidence of absence.
That is a fair point to raise, but we really have to look at the mechanics of historical verification here. When modern researchers comb through 17th and 18th century Irish Paris records, there are 0 birth registrations matching this specific scandal.
Wow, nothing at all.
Nothing. And more importantly, when we look at the meticulous land grants and colonial records of the Carolinas, which, by the way, were very well documented for tax purposes.
Oh, sure. The government always keeps track of taxes.
Exactly. There is no record of an Irish attorney arriving and suddenly buying a massive plantation.
So the whole wealthy background is just gone.
Completely. We don't even have independent maritime or colonial documents proving that a sailor named James Bonny ever existed.
Oh, wow. So even the husband might be fiction.
Likely fiction.
So we're basically dealing with a narrator who is giving us the intimate locked door details of a bedroom argument over silver spoons from decades prior across an ocean with a total 0 paper trail.
Precisely the issue. And honestly, the narrative structure of that spoon incident, it actually perfectly mirrors the plot devices used in popular London stage comedies of the 1720s.
Huh. So he just ripped off a sitcom plot.
Essentially, yes. It forces us to exercise extreme critical thinking. We are dealing with a historical source that clearly prioritized entertainment and book sales over factual accuracy.
Right.
Johnson needed a supervillain origin story, so he compiled colonial tropes, stage comedy tropes, and scandal tropes into one cohesive narrative.
It really makes you think about the media you consume today.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
how often do we accept a historical figure's dramatic backstory as fact just because it gets repeated on Wikipedia or in some movie?
Oh, all the time.
When it actually traces back to just one unreliable, sensationalized tabloid from centuries ago.
It happens constantly, which is exactly why, to find the real Anne Bonny, we have to totally discard that 1724 bestseller and jump forward to the moment she undeniably bursts into the actual verified historical record.
And that happens in the late summer of 1720, right in the middle of this massive geopolitical crisis in the Caribbean.
Yes, the curtain finally rises on the factual Anne in August 1720 in Nassau.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So, the British government, led by Governor Woodes Rogers, was actively trying to crush the golden age of piracy.
Right.
Nassau had been this sort of lawless pirate republic, but Rogers was bringing the hammer down. He was offering pardons or the noose.
A pretty stark choice. And the sources show that right in the middle of this crackdown, Anne is associating with a known pirate captain named John Rackham.
Also known as Calico Jack.
Calico Jack, right. And another woman, Mary Read. But they don't just associate, right? They take action.
They absolutely do. On the night of August 2010, 1720, Anne, Mary, Rackham, and a small crew of men basically orchestrate the theft of a sloop called the William.
Right out of the harbor.
They steal it right out of Nassau Harbor.
Which, if you think about it, is a logistical nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how do you quietly steal a massive ship from a heavily guarded harbor filled with pirate-hunting naval vessels? It's like a high-profile, modern carjacking, but with a building.
Yeah, a massive floating building. You have to do it under the cover of absolute darkness, and you have to be intimately familiar with the harbor's tides and the patrol schedules.
So they really knew what they were doing.
They did. They likely rowed out to the William, quietly overpowered the skeletal watch crew, and then, this is key, they cut the anchor cables rather than loudly winching them up.
Well, that makes sense. Winching would be super loud.
Extremely loud. So they cut the cables, and they use the midnight tide to just slip past the harbor forts before even unfurling the sails.
That is just incredibly audacious. And that single act is where her 61-day career actually begins.
Exactly.
And once they were at sea, I mean, the sources make it clear, Anne wasn't just some passive passenger or like a mascot for the crew. The trial documents confirm she was working as a powder monkey.
Yes. And that role is so often glossed over, but we really should focus on the visceral danger of it.
What exactly does a powder monkey do?
So, during a naval engagement, the powder monkey's job is to run back and forth from the ship's magazine, which is deep in the hold hauling volatile explosives and gunpowder up to the gun decks.
While the ship is actively under fire.
Exactly. It is chaotic, terrifying, physically exhausting labor. I mean, one stray spark and the entire ship just detonates.
Wow. And we actually have a really vivid factual description from one of their victims, right?
We do, yeah.
It's from a woman from Jamaica named Dorothy Thomas, who testified against them later. I want to highlight what she said because it grounds this whole story in reality.
It's a great primary source.
Dorothy stated that during a robbery, Anne and Mary wore men's jackets and long canvas trousers. They wrapped their heads in handkerchiefs to keep the sweat and the rigging out of their hair, and they wielded machetes and pistols.
Very different from the romantic painting.
So different. And she specifically noted that they cursed and swore violently, threatening to murder her. Dorothy actually claims she only realized they were women by the shape of their bodies.
And that eyewitness testimony is just invaluable because it completely strips away the romanticized Hollywood sheen.
Yeah, no flowing dresses and perfect hair.
Right. And by September 1720, this crew was causing enough trouble that Governor Rogers issued an official proclamation demanding their arrest. He specifically named Anne, Bonny, and Mary Read as outlaws.
Okay, but here's what I don't get.
What's that?
If Anne was essentially just doing the same grueling, chaotic, violent work as the male pirates on that ship, why did she and Mary specifically cause such a massive, society-breaking panic?
What's fascinating here is that we have to look at the intersection of gender and criminality in the 18th century.
Okay.
You have to remember the strict, really suffocating expectations placed on women during this era. I mean, the social order dictated that women were completely subservient, domestic, and physically delicate.
Yeah.
The entire foundation of colonial society relied on that hierarchy.
So to have two women not only at sea, but actively engaging in armed robbery, wearing men's trousers, swearing, threatening to murder captives with machetes.
It wasn't just a crime, you see. It was an existential threat to the social fabric itself.
Because they were breaking all the rules of gender, not just the law.
Exactly. The sheer shock value of their existence was totally unprecedented. Their behavior made them instant headline news across the Atlantic.
Which is funny because it inflated their notoriety way beyond their actual piratical success.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at the real economic impact of Rackham's crew during those 61 days, it was minimal.
They weren't exactly taking down treasure fleets.
No, not at all. They mostly harassed local merchant ships, stealing fishing nets, modest amounts of cargo, just supplies. They were not toppling empires or hoarding gold galleons.
Which makes sense because if they were causing this unprecedented headline-grabbing panic, the authorities were going to just let them sail off into the sunset.
Right.
How did the colonial government actually manage to stop a crew that desperate?
Well, the Jamaican governor commissioned a heavily armed privateer, which is essentially a licensed pirate hunter, a man named Jonathan Barnett.
Okay.
And he was specifically tasked with tracking them down. Barnett was well-funded, heavily armed, and he vastly outgunned Rackham's stolen sloop.
And they catch up to them pretty quickly. It's October 22, 1720.
Yep, just 2 months later.
Rackham's ship is discovered anchored near Negril Point, Jamaica. And we need to correct another massive myth right here, I think.
Oh, definitely. The surrender myth.
Yes. Because Charles Johnson's book claims that when Barnett attacked, all the men cowardly hid in the hold, and only Anne and Mary fought back on the deck, with Mary's supposedly shooting a fellow pirate in disgust.
It makes for a great movie scene.
It does, but that's not what the actual trial transcripts say, is it?
Not at all. The primary sources paint a much more realistic, honestly grim picture.
What actually happened?
The transcripts indicate that the crew briefly fired their swivel guns, but they surrendered quite quickly once Barnett's forces boarded the William.
So no epic last stand.
No. Nobody even died in the engagement. It was a swift, pragmatic capitulation, not a blazing final stand. They were totally outgunned, and they knew it.
So they were taken to Spanish Town, Jamaica, and put on trial in November. And reading the sources, the speed of the justice system here is jarring.
It was very fast.
Rackham and the men are tried first, found guilty basically immediately, and hanged just days later. Then it's Anne and Mary's turn.
18th century admiralty courts were designed for speed, not nuance.
Clearly.
The trial of the women was remarkably brief. The court called 4 witnesses, including that victim, Dorothy Thomas, we mentioned earlier.
Right.
The verdict was a foregone conclusion based on that overwhelming eyewitness testimony. They were found guilty of piracy, and the sentence was death by hanging.
But right as the sentence is handed down, Anne and Mary pulled the ultimate legal emergency brake.
She did.
They pleaded their bellies.
Yes. In the English common law system of the 18th century, if a condemned woman claimed she was pregnant, a jury of matrons would be convened.
A jury of matrons.
Yeah, this was a group of respected local women who would physically examine the prisoner. If they confirmed the pregnancy, the execution was stayed.
Okay, I have to ask, was she really pregnant? Or was this just a brilliant, calculated stalling tactic?
Well, the legal foundation for this was rooted in the moral belief that you could not execute an innocent unborn child for the crimes of the mother.
Right, that makes sense.
But practically speaking, pleading the belly was a very well-known survival tactic. Women who were navigating this fundamentally male-dominated, lethal legal system often used their biology as literally the only shield available to them.
It forced the bureaucratic machine to just hit pause.
It did. The jury of matrons granted both women a stay of execution. Regardless of whether it was a genuine pregnancy or a tactical manipulation of the law, it bought them time.
But the time ran out differently for both of them.
Tragically, yes.
The colonial records show Mary Read died in prison shortly after, around April 1721.
Likely from a fever contracted in the horrific conditions of that jail.
Yeah, and her burial is officially registered. But Anne Bonny's fate becomes history's great cliffhanger.
It really is.
Because there is no record of her execution, there's no record of her release or a pardon or a transfer, nothing.
Which is the perfect vacuum for a legend to grow.
Exactly.
Charles Johnson simply wrote in his book that she was reprieved from time to time, and what became of her, he could not tell.
So naturally, the rumors just sprouted everywhere.
Oh, yeah. The most persistent one claimed that her wealthy father, the one we already established likely didn't even exist,
Right.
that he swooped in, bought her freedom, and moved her to Virginia to live a long life.
But if the father's a myth, the rescue has to be a myth.
Right.
So what actually happened to her? Did she just vanish?
Well, there is one very compelling, highly credible piece of documentary evidence that historians tend to lean toward.
Oh, what is it?
A parish burial register for St. Catherine, which is the exact same parish in Jamaica where she was imprisoned and tried, lists the burial of an Anne Bonny on December 29th, 1733.
Wow. So she was buried in an unmarked grave with no family listed, no fanfare, just a tiny administrative note.
The contrast is eerie, isn't it?
Very.
You have the roaring, violent outlaw wielding a machete on the deck of the Willier in 1720, and then an anonymous, uncelebrated grave just 13 years later.
It's sobering. But while the real woman likely vanished into that quiet Jamaican dirt, the character of Anne Bonny was just getting started.
Oh, she was about to go global.
Because for the next 300 years, pop culture completely hijacked her identity.
Her legacy is absolutely staggering. I mean, within a decade of her trial, characters blatantly based on her were appearing in hit London stage operas.
Wow, that fast.
That fast. And by the 19th century, she was the star of penny dreadfuls and illustrated pirate anthologies. Today, she's featured in Netflix series, the Starz show Black Sails, video games like Assassin's Creed, and even Japanese manga.
And the evolution of her physical image is fascinating, too, because it is entirely made up.
It's all projected onto her.
Think about it. She's almost always depicted today as this fiery, swashbuckling redhead. Do you know where the red hair comes from?
I do, and it's hilarious.
It's a random cigarette trading card printed in 1888.
Yep.
There is zero historical record of her hair color, but some Victorian tobacco company decides she's a redhead to sell smokes, and suddenly, boom, it's historical canon.
It illustrates perfectly how history is molded by the commercial media of the time.
Yeah.
But perhaps the most interesting evolution of Anne Bonny's legacy is the speculation regarding her sexuality, specifically the really enduring claim that she and Mary Read were romantic lovers.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we have this incredible opportunity to trace how a modern cultural icon gets compiled piece by piece across centuries.
Right.
Let's look strictly at the sources. Where does the idea that Anne and Mary were lovers actually originate?
Well, if we look at the primary sources, it certainly didn't originate in the courtroom. There is absolutely no mention of a romantic relationship in the trial transcripts, the victim testimonies, or contemporary newspapers.
Not at all.
None. The very first time it is written down is in 1725 in a cheap, unauthorized knockoff of Charles Johnson's book. It was called The History and Lives of All the Most Notorious Pirates.
So a plagiarized book invents a scandalous detail to basically outsell the original.
Exactly. The author just casually threw in a line suggesting an intimate relationship to titillate his readers.
Wow.
And for nearly 2 centuries, that detail just sat there in obscurity. Then, in 1914, an early sexologist named Magnus Hirschfeld repeated that one sentence in a broader text about homosexuality.
And from there, it jumps into the modern era.
Yes, the concept really gained traction in 1972. A radical feminist publication unearthed their story and published an article praising Anne and Mary as this fierce, anti-establishment couple.
Which is a powerful image.
Absolutely. And this interpretation heavily influenced playwrights, novelists, and historians throughout the late 20th century, which really cemented the idea in our modern pop culture landscape.
Which brings us all the way to 2020, when a statue of Anne and Mary was unveiled in London, specifically celebrating them as a couple, designed to represent how they emotionally completed each other.
It's a fascinating historiographical journey.
It is, and I want to use an analogy here because it feels exactly like treating history as an open-source software project.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The real Anne's life is this blank piece of code, and every subsequent generation comes along, forks the code, and rewrites it to build the exact application they need for their time.
The open source analogy captures the historiography perfectly, because the real Anne left no diaries, no letters, no personal testaments of her internal life. She remains a total blank canvas.
Right, we only have external views of her.
We know what she did for 61 days, but we have absolutely no idea why she did it. Did she love the sea? Was she escaping trauma? Was she just an opportunist?
We just don't know.
We don't know.
She represents this pure rebellion against the constraints of her era.
Yeah.
And because her actual motives are completely unknown, she becomes perfectly adaptable to whatever kind of rebellion a modern audience is searching for.
Exactly. The Victorians needed a dashing rogue, so they coded her as a fiery redhead. Modern audiences were searching for stories of defiance against patriarchal structures, so they coded her as a fierce, queer icon.
We're basically projecting our own societal desires onto that 61-day blank slate.
Yar.
We started this deep dive looking for a woman, and we found a myth-making industry. I mean, we went from a completely unknown, unrecorded early life to a hyper-violent 61-day maritime terror to a 300-year reigning pop culture icon.
And doing this kind of source analysis is just so vital.
Yeah.
When we separate the sparse, gritty historical facts from the incredibly exciting fiction, we don't actually destroy the story. We uncover something much more profound about how human beings create myths to process their own history.
That's incredibly well said. But I want to leave you with one final lingering thought. Let's assume that 1733 burial record is truly hers. That means Anne Bonny lived for over a decade in Jamaica after her piracy days ended, escaping the noose through sheer bureaucratic inertia.
Right.
Imagine what it must have been like for her, living a quiet, nondescript life. She might have walked past taverns and newsstands where sailors were eagerly reading Charles Johnson's wildly exaggerated, completely fictionalized accounts of her own life.
Wow.
Did the real Anne Bonny get to sit in the shadows, sipping a drink and just watch her own myth take over the world?
Just a woman who spent 61 days on a stolen ship.
Exactly, silently watching herself become immortal.